Now, let me start by acknowledging Angela Whitworth, our treasurer here, sitting shotgun with me, but it's a great team of people at GDOT that helps us work through this budget process every year. George Christensen is our budget director. He's here, and Sarah McDougall also. So a great budget team here to prepare today. So we'll jump in and summarize a little bit before we jump into your track document, and just remind you of what the total amended FY23 budget looks like, as you see on the screen or on your handout on page 2. The excise change to the 23 base was $89 million, which represents basically an interest payment there on motor fuel that was recognized through the Department of Revenue. So that brings motor fuel or excise to $2.097 billion. I remind you that the Transportation Trust Fund is a combination of the hotel fee, the heavy vehicle impact fees, and electric vehicle fees. There was no change in the base at $150.9 million. You'll see a Greta add and deduct there, and Janine Miller with Greta will talk about that later. Also in the Transit Trust Fund, I remind you that's the rideshare fees at $15.9 million were in the base, and there was no change as well. Let me just share on the Transit Trust Fund and the Transit Trust Fund, there's a 2-year look back for actual collections that are appropriated ahead. So when we're looking at 23, we're really looking at what 21 collections were, so that everything's trued up. And then there's a State General Fund add of $12.3 million to bring State General Funds to $49 million, and I will enumerate what those are next in just a moment. On the next slide, slide 3, is just, again, a way to aggregate where does the money go. And we've bundled together a couple of state budget programs. And again, this is the state budget numbers. Capital projects consist of 3 budget programs: capital construction, capital maintenance, and local roads administration. And that totals $1.1 billion, or about 48% of the state budget. So almost half of it goes right into those capital projects. General operations comes in at $262 million. That's actually 5 budget programs combined. Departmental admin, program delivery, so that's the upfront work of getting projects done. Data collections, which is a federal reporting where we keep up with miles and inventory of roadways and bridges and things like that. The planning function led by Janine Miller, and also traffic management, keeping up with signals and technology and doing all the things it relates to movement of traffic. We bundled all those together and just call those general operations because it's more of the administrative doing and preparation, not the physical building of things. The next column there is the local maintenance improvement grant. Again, 10% of excise is what that is at almost $209.7 million. The next biggest bar, though, is routine maintenance. Again, taking care of the house, as I like to say it, taking care of the roadways, roadsides, the bridges, everything there. That's where the bulk of our personnel is. Over half the department staff, more than half personnel is in the maintenance budget, which is 21% of the state budget. And the smaller little bars there are payments to CERTA, and I'll mention that later. Intermodal, GO bond debt at $112.4 million, and then payments to CERTA, and I'll mention that later as well. On the next slide, now this is where it gets a little tricky. We've taken the your track sheet here and tableized it just to put it in a little more concise area of looking at along the left column the budget programs. The next is fund sources, and there's multiple fund sources here. So on the GO bond debt, let me flip to your page to track along. If Angela, if you give a page shout out there, let me just go ahead and get started. Total. It's actually going to be in a separate section. That's right. Yeah, that's bond debt is in a separate part. But let me just go, because that comes off the top of our budget process. What you'll see there is a fund source swap for GO bond debt. Transportation Trust Fund fees were in the base budget, and we're moving $86.6 million out of there and replacing GO bond debt with motor fuel. So it's really a motor fuel swap, but as you noticed, There's $90.3 million in motor fuel and $86.6 million of transportation trust funds. The delta is the increase in debt service that was realized due to higher interest rates on the GO bond debt. So that nets out to be a $3.7 million difference between that fund source swap and the additional debt service that was paid, bringing total debt service to $112.4 million, or almost 112.5. The next, now I can get you back to the pages you're on. The page 6 is the capital construction program. So the capital construction program is the program that gets the projects done. Those are every type of capital expansion or roundabout or passing lane or road widening, anything of those kind of capital nature projects. And so you can see that in this capital construction that we added the $86.6 million of transportation trust funds into the capital construction budget. But also you can see a motor fuel reduction of $35 million there. And that part of that money, lion's share of it, is being redistributed, $25 million down into the next budget program of routine maintenance. So if you see that, we're increasing those percentages into or that $25 million into routine maintenance. And as Mr. Chairman, as I presented to your Transportation Committee this week, we talked about the increased cost of doing business. Well, that applies in the maintenance sector as well, where we've seen tremendous increases in those maintenance activities, such as mowing the grass, repairing the guardrail, sweeping the roads, and even we have a maintenance contract on all of the I-95, where we have a private sector that maintains I-95 on the coast.
And that $25 million is what we're seeing on page 15 of our tracker, is that correct?
Yes.
On page 15?
For routine maintenance.
Should be.
354.1.
No, page, hold on a minute. Page 13 is routine maintenance.
Yeah, page 13.
Line item 354.1.
Got the same line item. I think our page numbers are just a little
Okay.
different,
Okay.
but that's
All
great.
right. Yeah, yes, sir. You're right. That's correct. And so that's where that's coming out. Let me add though, because capital construction is very important. Even with the $25 million reduction, it is still more than what we had. We closed out amended 22 in. So we closed amended 22 about $949 million in capital construction. We still end up at 963. So we're still growing the capital construction budget, what it takes to get work done. So, but again, everything costs more. The LMIG is the next column on the screen, and that's a recognition of the adjustment and the excise of adding $8.9 million, which is 10% of the excise. So that brings LMIG, the Local Maintenance Improvement Grant Program, to $209.8 million. So fan favorite of all the cities and counties, and a really efficient program. Into payments to CERTA, you can see a small increase there of $351,000. And Janine Miller will talk about that as it relates to CERTA and Greta in that. The payments, the ultimate amended FY23 at $49.6 million in payments to CERTA is really comprised of two things. One is $12.9 million for the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank, and the rest of it is paying our debt service that CERTA holds for us, which is federal debt service through what is called Garvey debt service. So that's what the money that goes to CERTA is doing, those two things, GTIB and paying our debt service. On the next slide, in the next page, we're moving along into airport aid, which I think is back on your, sorry for the back and forth.
Yes. Oh, apologies.
343.2.
I have to make it simple and tell them put it in a table. As an engineer, I need a spreadsheet, so I'm not an accountant. So that's back on the first page. Is airport aid. So in airport aid, you can see an ad from the House at $7.8 million. So that is fantastic in airport aid. In fact, our FY23 budget requests from all the airports around the state total $298 million, of which, using federal aviation money and local match, state match, we would need $74.6 million to satisfy every request we got for airport aid. So getting the budget to $34.2 million with the House ad of 7.8 is very good. That will certainly help us to work down the priority list for 23 and also help with some of the projects that are airports and are no different. They're experiencing increased cost as well. So
I'm going to pause you there, Commissioner.
Yes,
I think we got a couple questions. I have one first, and that is, have you seen the list from the House as to what they're envisioning as far as where that expense is going to go?
Not at this time, but I would expect there was probably some priority there. And again, we work off a priority list as we match the federal aviation dollars.
Great.
If we're matching this.
Senator Beach is trying to run out the clock here, but he has a question.
Yes, no question.
You know, I'm a big believer in airport aid and investing in our airports. And I remember when I was chair of this committee, it was like at $12 million. So I'm glad to see it go to 34. That's a bit, you know, we're trending the right way. But on that money, can that be spent on just runway type construction, or can you do hangars and do other things at the airport, or is it just on capital projects?
Yeah, so
dealing with the runways and
so what we try to do is leverage it with FAA dollars to pull down more federal dollars if that's a possibility, and it takes more match to pull down FAA dollars because they're grant type dollars. So in that case, it's more of the rehabilitation and some of the capital improvements like the lighting systems, flight navigation kind of equipment. And but they won't cover some of the basic maintenance. So sometimes the state dollars are just used with local dollars, airport authority dollars, to do basic maintenance things. As it relates to hangars, we generally have not been in the hangar business because usually hangars generate revenue for the airport, and we're just trying to take care of the state of good repair as our first priority.
we do have a hangar shortage.
Indeed, and acknowledged in that joint study committee that was a big issue about hangars, and they're success begets success. So I think that's something that we'll continue to look at and try to be flexible where we can.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Sure.
You said if you really had all the requests you wanted to fund, it would be what, 74 million?
That's correct.
You said? How do you prioritize it? Do people apply for airport aid and you?
That's correct. They send a list, and we do condition analysis as well. We have a state aviation plan with criteria, and so we sort of score and rank based on what those criteria are meeting. But again, it's just like everybody. Everybody's got a need, no matter what size.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's all the questions we have so far.
Okay.
She can carry on.
Okay, so the next item is rail, and there was a $3 million ad from the House, bringing rail total to $12.2 million. And as noted, it was to continue to upgrade our Class 2 rail lines to bring them up to 286,000 train load, 286,000 pound train car that can go up to 25 miles an hour. I might add, that doesn't seem very fast, but we still have over 100 miles that don't meet that condition, that you've got to go below 25 miles an hour and you can't haul a full train car.
And this is 353.3 for members of the committee.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. We'll cross-reference next time. I apologize. So that's where those dollars will be going. We'll continue to work on those priorities. As well, I might add that we have 67 railroad bridges on the short lines, state-owned short lines, that need some form of rehabilitation as well to carry those train cars. We've got a lot of work done on the rail upgrades, but we need to work on those trestles and those bridges as well. So that's where those dollars will be deployed between those two things. Then next on the table is transit. Angela, what is that?
Item 356.2.
Thank you. In transit, multiple fund sources here. That's why we got it in the table. The transit trust fund fees, those are the rideshare fees, no change at $15.9 million. Transportation trust fund, no change at $1.68, and then a $1.496 million add of state general funds. And I want to thank the House for that add, and let me explain why that's important. So last year, as the bipartisan infrastructure law was rolled out, FTA has a portal system that you go through to contract with them. And so we provide 125 subrecipients. So there's transit operators and planning for transit that we administer each year 125 subrecipient contracts to. Well, what happened was the federal system was not open at the year-end close of the state fiscal year. So we got into that situation that we couldn't use the money in 22 to meet the federal 22 money, and so we got that little bit of time between state shutdown and federal shutdown. So what this $1.4 million does is allows us to match the federal 22 money, and the other $1.68 million there also matches the federal FY 23 money, and we'll do it in the state budget year so we stay in sync. Otherwise, it's a big delay to the local transit providers for them to get their federal dollars, and they have to put their match in as well. So this gets us sort of reconciled and right-sized and going forward, and shouldn't have to make this adjustment again. But that's what that is, and again, I appreciate the House for that acknowledgement and your favorable consideration of that as well. And I believe with that, that sort of walks through the major changes to the budget and the items that we had to discuss with you today, and be glad to take any more questions.
Any questions from members of the committee? Yes, Senator C., you're on number 6.
I just see Sapelo Island, and I hadn't read up on it, so can you just walk me through what this item is talking about?
Yes, ma'am. The Senator C., Sapelo item, we partnered with Department of Natural Resources, being the federal transportation agency, and we just were awarded a $4 million grant from USDOT for a no-low ferry replacement. So this becomes the match money for that federal grant. So it's a partner with Department of Natural Resources. Now I have volunteered to run that. They won't let me on it. It seems like a great job to run the ferry, but that's exactly what that's for.
We don't preserve it. I just want to make sure I'm got a radar.
Absolutely, and that's why, again, it was going after grant dollars, didn't get them used, and now we can, and we've got them there to go forward now that the state has been awarded this grant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Commissioner, I don't see any other questions. Angela, thank you as well for keeping us on track. And we're going to go ahead and call Commissioner Spencer Moore with DDS.
Mr. Chairman, I am Ricky Rich, the Deputy Commissioner of Driver Services. Mr. Commissioner Moore is on a DMV Global Summit this week and is unable to be here, so he sends his regrets and he sends me. So I'll get right to the point. I know that you have the slides, and I know you have our overview and our numbers and things, but one thing I do want to point out is just our Real ID enrolled customers is 99.84%, which is the highest in the country. There's no state that's that close. There's a lot of states that are a lot further away, so our citizens are a lot closer to being Real ID compliant than any other state. We'll go to the tracking, and this is 123.1. And on 123.1, there is no request there. We plan to utilize our state funds or our existing funds to onboard and train all of our new managers for these new centers that are coming up. So it won't so as zero funding there. We're going to be using existing funds now. On 21.2.2 is the only request we have today. That is an increase in funds for the construction of the Douglasville Customer Service Center, and that's a request in the amount of $1,125,663. And we have signed the funding agreement with the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission. That was signed on December 16th of 2022. The total project is $4,525,663. The bond appropriation was $3,400, so it leaves that difference of $1,125,663. The next slide that we have breaks out really what those numbers are. The first one is we did an RFP. The lowest bid came in at $8,000 and $685. which was already $608,685 over budget. There's going to be additional professional fees that are needing. That's mostly architectural and engineering services. And then the next thing is the surveys and tests needed to take ownership of the property, and that's $66,927. On this particular project, the county is responsible for doing the site development. They have hired their own contractor to do that development, and then once that's done and it's to our satisfaction or the state's satisfaction, then it'll be turned over to the state to actually build and construct the building. So the surveys and tests are needed to make sure the compaction rate and the assessments and the tests are done to make sure that it's suitable for our, for the state to take it over. The $281,201 is a 10% contingency that just wanted us to requested that we have in there. And again, those numbers equal the $1,125,663. Any questions?
I do have a question about that, and I could just be confused, but my understanding is there's money appropriated for Hazelhurst and Forsyth and Monroe, and for the Douglasville. What's the current status of Hazelhurst and Forsyth?
Okay. Glad you asked. We expect the construction on Hazelhurst to be done by the end of this year. It's actually moving very well, very quickly. And you asked about Monroe, probably by the end of the year again, the end of this calendar year. We expect that one to be constructed. They're already doing the site development now and the site work, so we should expect that one. And then you mentioned Oconee County. We're working on the RFP there now. That's going to be a design build, so we'll end up hiring the architect and the contractor in the same RFP. And so once we should have a contractor on board probably by the end of March, and then it should be about a 10-month build for Oconee. So we're very, very, very happy to be having these.
That's great. So the other three projects really are still on track, and they're really Douglasville. You just need some extra money to fill the gap to get that one done.
That's exactly right. Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Perfect. Any other questions from the committee? Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
All right, Office of Highway Safety. Is Alan Poole here?
Yes, sir.
You're not big timing us and sending somebody else. I like that. You're here in the flesh. We're gonna.
You get the real me.
We're gonna make sure your budget gets taken care of, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you so much.
Commissioner Moore is the incoming president of the International Board of
We know he's doing important work. While he's up there, the important work that he's doing, I do have a personal request. This whole, I want my driver's license on my phone. And I know y'all are working on it. I hear it's coming this year, and I'm so excited. So it's going to be a good day when that can happen.
Mr. Chairman, fellow members, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today to present. I do have some handouts if you need them.
That'd be great.
But I'm going to keep mine short and sweet for time's sake.
You're even better.
Mr. Chairman, again, thank you so much. I do have my finance director with me today, Ms. Laura Bolander, but I'm going to try to be short and sweet. If I may direct your attention to line item 269.1, that increase was a favorable recommendation from the House. That $3,000 equate to 3 new laptops. The 269.2, that $36,000, 253. That's for additional travel. That's a total of $39,253. With that said, Mr. Chairman, if you go down to line item 269.100, the first line, you will see where the 599, 592 transferred over to the 39,259 is an equal of 638.845. That's the total of what we're asking for today to continue the travel that we much needed. The 599, to be able to complete the FY23 amended budget.
Great. Can you give us some color on that travel? Because I understand it covers a couple years, or there was something I was told that I don't recall the specifics of that. Marty, you probably remember.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that just what's the use of that travel? Where are those funds going?
The use of the travel is in the past 2 years, we had to meet those particular cuts. And Mr. Chairman, what have happened, we have opened back up since the pandemic. It gives myself and the deputy director, Mr. Jimmy Sumner, the opportunity to meet those requirements, to be in face as we build partnerships throughout the state with particular partners. And we feel that it's necessary for us to be there face to face so that we can meet those responsibility. And I will defer to my finance director, Ms. Laura.
So on this particular document that you have in your packet, this is the breakdown of what I prepared for the House when we came before them and asked for the different things that we needed to make us successful for the remainder of the year. So there is a complete breakdown on page 2 of the travel, history of the travel of what we've done in the past years. And then there's events and programs labeled at the bottom that show what we have planned for the next 4 to 5 months with our programs that we're doing for our mission. And then if you go to page 3, it further breaks it down. So it takes it by event or by program, and it gives you the projected travel costs for each of those events. Now these are only state-funded employees that are going to these functions. The federal-funded people are not involved in this calculation. So that is why this was imperative that we get that money so that we could finish up the year and go to these different conferences and programs that we have planned. So, you know, in order for us to be successful and get some of these numbers that are rising on our highways down and build, you know, the relationships and the really get out there and educate the public.
Mr. Chairman, the House have just convened a special committee to look at why the numbers are continuing to rise. And so it's incumbent on us if we get out there and make sure that we partner. The $638,000 actually opened up the door for us to receive more than $21 million from the federal government. We only have 8 people that's paid out of this P&A portion of the funds, and it'll give us an opportunity to be out there in the public so that we can figure out ways that we need to drive these numbers the opposite way. So it's obvious that someone in the House feels the same way we do when it comes to saving lives and reducing crashes and injuries on the Georgia highways.
Great, thank you.
And then I have one more piece when we go to this document. I will show you the new projected amount that we have, the 638. And then all of these entries right here are what we spent so far in our P&A budget. So that leaves us with the 343,609.86 if we go with the House budget. And so if you turn to the next page, it's a really good page. It's got lots of good news on it. Because you start with that balance of 343 and then you do your projected expenses here and you see that we're only $90 shy. So that kind of a number we can work with to never go over, but it helps us to get what we need to get done, especially in this travel section where
we've been extremely frugal.
And then we are a pilot program for the National Highway Safety Program, and Jimmy Sumner can speak on that, where Georgia is the pilot program for this and what we'll be doing with that.
Yes, we're the NHTSA Region 4 areas, 5 states. Georgia's one of the states, and we're just a leader, and we've been chosen by NHTSA to be the leader into going around and trying to reach the communities, having town hall meetings with the people in the community that are players in highway safety, DOT engineers first, one thing and another. And so it's a pilot project because the numbers in this region, the southeast region, are going up, and the federal government recognizes it as well. So we're honored to be a part of that, but it will increase our travel budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Short and sweet.
Excellent. Thank you all. Appreciate you guys being here. Next, we're going to call on the increasingly busy Janine Miller, whose business card I think is now front and back with all of the new responsibilities that you have. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be the shortest amongst them, I promise you. Okay. In terms of our budget for amended 23, it's very simple. It's nothing more than a transfer of our funds for from the Department of Community Affairs to Georgia DOT for the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority program. That is in section 16, line item 85.1. It is the $351,479 transfer out of DCA over to GDOT. This was initiated by the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget to align all of the transportation activities under the Department of Transportation. So it's a simple transfer of those funds over to GDOT's budget, item 358.1.
Great.
Just also to follow up on what the Commissioner mentioned about the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank, that nearly $13 million is mostly, I think it's entirely motor fuel funds, and we're excited about what that program has done over the years and look forward to telling you more about that during the big budget 24 presentation.
Great. Any questions from members of the committee? We have 14 minutes to come in under Senator Beach's time. So while the planning director is here, anybody want to make any road funding requests for your district? I'm going to talk to you about Post Road and Forsyth County, if it's okay.
Chairman, I'm going to quit training you. I've worked with you. I've been his mentor since he got here, and now he's outshining me. So I think I'm going to have to slow down on.
I just wake up every day and say, what would Brandon do? So that's. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Members of the committee, thank you so much. We're adjourned.